everybody. Welcome who is joining us now live as we record, and also who's going to be watching us later as we stream it online. We are so happy to be back for another session of Beit Abulafia with Jason Kaplan, our wonderful host and creator of all of this programming. We have an incredible guest today. I think Jason and I have both been geeking out that we have the incredible musician Jean-Michel Pilc joining us. We are going to talk about meditation and music and jazz and silence and how all of these work together. So Jason, before we get started, Jean-Michel, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, my pleasure. It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be wonderful. Jason, you're going to share a little bit of a bio and then we're going to jump right in.
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Shoshana, for hosting. Thank you, everyone, for joining this Beit Abulafia, very unique program, very, very unique. And a brief bio from this wonderful website of jeanmichelpilc.com, born in 1960 in Paris, France, now also an American and Canadian citizen, self-taught pianist and composer. Jean-Michel Pilc has performed with numerous jazz giants. A couple of people have joined us on our program, including Dave Liebman and I believe Kenny Werner is listed later. But this is on the website. Roy Haynes, Lenny White, Chris Potter, just to name a few of the illustrious people, Mingus Dynasty and Big Band. And since he became a professional musician in the late 80s, Jean-Michel has constantly been very active internationally, touring over 60 countries, including all of Europe, Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Abu Dhabi, South America, Mexico, USA, and Canada. He has his own projects, high demand as co-leader and sideman, participating in numerous projects all over the world, recording a lot of albums. So welcome, Jean-Michel Pilc.
Hello. Wow. What a nice bio. I almost don't recognize myself.
You've done all the work to get that bio. Come on, own
It's,
that. That's
it's funny.
amazing.
It's funny because you're naming all the famous musicians whom I've played with, but most of them I've played maybe once or twice. And the most important musical adventures of my life have been with people that sometimes nobody knows. It's always bios are a distortion of reality in some cases. So.
Right, I hear that, but you can back this one up, so it's all good. You have the experience and all of the life lessons so far. I want to back up a little bit, and we're going to start way back, Jean-Michel. You often speak about freeing musicians from dependency on theory and patterns. You've been called unpredictable jazz piano player and a musical genius for your harmonic reinventions. So what was the turning point for you? And I'm guessing it was many years ago in your life when you realized that true music comes from really inner experiences and not necessarily what we are taught, in black and white or in a classroom.
Well, first of all, I think the word genius should be handled with care. I mean, that's a word that comes
I
with
found that online. That's you.
Don't trust the
Not
internet.
everything you see online is true, right?
I told you that bios are a distortion of reality. So, but no, I think people, there is a new genius every 10 minutes these days. So I think you have to give it time. I think genius is something that takes a couple of generations to really sink in. So we have lots of geniuses who've been forgotten from the past. No, I just see myself as somebody who fell in love with music at a young age. And it never really occurred to me when I heard jazz in particular. I was 7 years old. I didn't occur to me that such a thing could be taught. I was like, it's so wonderful. I heard it. I heard Big Baker, Louis Armstrong, Sidney Bechet, Django Reinhardt, etc. The list goes on and on from my uncles. Primarily, we're great music lovers, but jazz lovers, particularly traditional jazz. They didn't like bebop or modern jazz too much. So I kind of discovered jazz from the beginnings, which I think is a big, big issue now with students who start in 1978, and have no idea what happened before. And when I heard that music, to me, it was like a language. I heard people talking to me. Louis Armstrong was talking to me, personally. So I had a big ego at the time, so I thought he was talking to me personally. And it never occurred to me that it could be taught because it made so much sense as it was, Just listening to it, I was like, yeah, it's so obvious, Then when I started playing, I discovered it was not as obvious as I would have thought, because then you discover, how complex it is and how difficult it is to do it yourself properly. But it never occurred to me that somebody could Tell me what to do. It was in the records. I heard it. If you listen to Bud Powell, you hear what he plays. What is somebody going to do? Tell me what he plays? I hear it. Now, of course, I have to do the work of transcribing and trying to figure out which are the notes he plays and why does it work so well, and why does I feel what I feel when I'm listening to him. That's one thing, but it's all there in the records, And I think I'm no exception in the sense that people my generation, jazz musicians my generation, were mostly self-taught. There was no jazz school. There was one jazz school in Paris, but we made fun of it. We were like, well, what are they doing? What do they do in this place? And then next thing you know, I'm teaching at McGill. So you never know. Life has a sense of humor, but that's it. And to me, when I discovered later that there are people doing scales and theories and stuff, I was interested because I was like, oh, really? Okay, let me. And I still find it interesting. But to me, that's not the source. That's not the start of the process. The process. It's a language. And I always say, do kids learn how to speak from grammar and theories? Theories? Have you ever seen a 2-year-old who speaks fluently and then he's going to tell you the syntax of the sentences he's using? Or she? No, of course not. So you learn music, it's a language. You have to learn the language. And then later you get interested in, you want to become, a writer, you pay attention to grammar, syntax, and stuff like that. But I think at the beginning, it's just a language. It's a way to speak.
But it was significant enough at a young age of 7, right? That it sparked something in you that then continued your journey onto where it's gone till now.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I already heard stuff that I now am able to play. I heard stuff, it was very blurry in my mind, of course, but I heard stuff, and to this day, sometimes I play stuff and I'm like, oh, I go back to when I was a child. I think when you play music, you have to remain a child. You always have to go back to that. Otherwise, that's another problem with jazz education. It turns children into adults. That's a big problem.
Right. It's
So
quite complicated.
yeah, it is made complicated. The great pianist Arthur Schnabel, he said something. He said, experts are people who make the simple complicated. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he also said that Mozart sonatas were too easy for children, but too difficult for adults. That summarized what I'm trying to say. That it's when you're a child, you hear music and it's very pure, it's very clear. Of course, after
Yeah.
that, you have to learn how to do it, but it's there already.
Right. Jason, it's so interesting. Something that Jean-Michel said immediately made me think of Universal Language Room when he said that music talks to him, right? And so we don't even have to have words. And that's a lot about what you do in your ULR sessions, right? And we're going to talk about improvisation next. But that makes me think a lot about what you do and how we've got these people in the room and maybe they've never met each other, Jason, right? And they're
Yeah.
communicating through all these different instruments without
Mhm.
words.
Well, I
Exactly, but
think
it's like a conversation. People who don't know each other have conversations all the time. In the train. Do they need to rehearse? I don't think so. Music. Do you rehearse life? Do you rehearse love? No. So music to me is the same category. Of course, I'm simplifying. Then you have to practice. But okay, we'll go there later.
Right? Jason, it sounds familiar, right?
it sounds very familiar, and this is why I've been on the lookout for these types of artists like Jean-Michel, because when I get together with people and we're exchanging the permutations and we're going back and forth with the ideas, I've always wanted to enhance that. And it was also my journey because when I started music, I started right in theory, and my teacher showed me theory and modes, and I tried my best to learn the modes, and so I went through all that for 20 years. And discovering Abulafia was the first step in simplification of just saying, I'm just going to use permutations. I don't want scales or chords or theory. So I got that all whittled away. And then I was looking at jazzheaven.com website, a wonderful website, if I could plug a
Yep.
wonderful jazz website. And Jean-Michel's course was there. And I recently, about 2 months ago, got the course. And he went through the idea of this is just a language. Why are we getting involved with all this intellectual things? And here's some techniques of how to practice without going into theory. And I thought, wow, it really opened up a lot of doors. And so this is the natural progression for me and my own evolution to go from permutations to more ways to even kick off the permutations as training wheels and get straight into the music as Jean-Michel teaches. And I think that's why it's so important for our audience to hear from him.
Love it.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead,
No, no, no,
Josh.
please, please.
Um, I think that, and that's true in many human areas. Many activities. People tend to forget the obvious. The obvious is, if you don't hear something, how in the world are you going to play it? If you hear something and you take your instrument and your instrument is disconnected from what you hear and it's just your fingers doing the work, it's like your tongue saying words that you don't think. You know, I always tell my students, I say, you improvise all the time in life. You have an idea and you express it. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes it stays in your brain. You talk to yourself. You have those internal conversations. Would you start by theorizing all of this because before you can do that? Of course not. You do it, from a very young age. So, and that's an obvious thing. I mean, you have an idea, it comes out as language, either to other people or to yourself inside of your brain. And I'm like, music is just like life. And when you wake up in the morning, you start improvising right away. Maybe you're going to go to the bathroom first, maybe to the kitchen, maybe you're going to drink orange juice, maybe you're going to pick a yogurt, and then you're going to decide that you have a phone call to get, well, maybe I'll do it You improvise all the time. And people say, well, how come we don't improvise in the classical area? Again, I'm like, I don't know. It is so obvious to me that you should, because that's that's what humans do. They improvise. There are two things humans do, and the late great actor Marlon Brando said it. They improvise and they act. That's what we all do all the time. You know what I'm saying. Sometimes we have to act really well to hide some things, but we act and we improvise. And in music, it's the same. You improvise and you act. Also, you put yourself in a certain, I would say, you cast yourself sometimes, and then the music comes out. It's very interesting.
So that's perfect because I want to talk a little bit more about this improvisation. And I would think that a lot of music making is improvisation. So when you're up there and you're playing at the highest levels and you're just jamming, you're doing your thing, are you consciously thinking about these notes that are coming out? Or are you just in a different state of consciousness where it really is organic and natural and it's flowing? Or is it a mix of all the things?
I think it's option two mainly. Uh, I, I I call sometimes people call music improvisation. Sorry, how they call it a flow of consciousness or something. How do you say it that way?
We
Stream of
say
consciousness,
stream
maybe?
of consciousness.
A stream. That's what I was looking. Sometimes my English fails me. Sometimes my French fails me. It can go both ways. But stream of consciousness. I call it a stream of subconsciousness.
Ah,
You don't have time to make decisions. You don't have time to think about notes. You think of a note and it's already a bar later. Intellect is way too slow for music. I mean, intellect is slow. I'm not saying it's not great. Intellect
right.
is very powerful, but it's slow. It takes time. You have to think. You don't have that time in the music. So in a way, I'm sure the brain makes like micro decisions and stuff happens somewhere in some parts of my brain that I am not aware of, but I have no time to analyze that or look at it. That's sometimes I can feel I'm making decisions like, hey man, you're not good right now. Stop playing for a second, stuff like that. Sometimes you hear the little voice that tells you what to do or not to do. But mostly it is a flow of subconscious, a stream of subconsciousness, meaning that it comes out. Like, for example, when you have an idea, I'm going back to the language thing. I think it's such a good analogy for pretty much everything. You have an idea, it comes out of your mouth. You're not like, oh, I'm having an idea. Let's see, how can I express this? No. I mean, you do that when you're a lawyer or a politician, or maybe, But when you're a normal human being having a normal conversation with normal people in normal life, you have the idea, the words come out. As simple as that. So your brain doesn't ponder every word, doesn't look at the syllables. When you talk about the modes and the scales, it's like syllables, but when you speak naturally, you don't have time to talk, to think about the syllables. the idea is there and the words come out, and the whole idea is enclosed in those words already. I mean, the idea was already there before you even open your mouth. It's instant. Then the sentence comes out. And next thing you know, your idea is out there. And music is exactly that. I mean, especially improvisation. Especially improvisation.
I think her computer might have frozen a little bit. Okay, no problem. So we'll keep going.
Yeah, I was starting to get scared. There was this big silence
The
suddenly.
silence.
I
So
said,
so I
maybe,
guess
I said maybe, did I say something weird? No, I'm kidding.
well, so on the same path, I have found that the more that we lower the conscious training, the more that we can get into the subconscious. And it's been really fascinating to me, and I thought the audience would really like to hear. It's been fascinating to me how you've shown the one-man band concept of
Mm.
playing the drums and then singing the bass line. And I think you have a certain phrase for it about not being distracted, but differentiating or something where you.
Mm.
So can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit that to us?
Well, I think humans are computers in a way. I know that when I say that, some people are not very happy, but humans we are machines. We are biological machines with all kind of stuff. I think humans sometimes overestimate themselves. They think they are this incredible thing. Well, the day when you look at the progress of artificial intelligence, I think the day we will do artificial intelligence machines with as many neurons as we have neurons in the brain. Well, they'll simply be as intelligent as we are, and they're already pretty close. I mean, I don't want to say anything bad, but in some cases even smarter than some humans. But
Hmm.
so we multitask. That's what
Hmm.
I'm getting at. Is
Hmm.
that as biological machines or computers, we handle different things in the same time. We do that all the time without even noticing. You read your when you drive. A good analogy is the driving. You drive, you talk to your passenger, you're thinking about I don't know what, you're listening to music or the news. You are, I bought something on that shop, and you are actually moving the wheel, pressing pedals. You're doing a lot of things that's not that simple when you're driving, but you don't think about it. You're not like, what's the angle of the wheel in the street that I should use? Come on. If you do that, you're going to crash pretty fast, right? Oh, what's the pressure I should put on the pedal? You don't have time to think again. So, the I don't have time to, it's the same expression. So basically what happens is that those activities are in the background of your mind, not to mention the heartbeat and the breathing, also handled by the brain, but normally, and unless you're sick, you don't have to think about those. And so to me, rhythm is the heartbeat. If I play a rhythm like this and I talk to you, and I can even take a drum solo and talk to you, it's internalized. That's the word that I use. It's internalized. It is dissociated from my rational thoughts while I'm talking to you. And it has to be. Because if I have to think about the rhythm while I'm talking to you, that means that when I will be playing the piano, or I will have to think about this and
Hmm.
play in the same time. That's impossible. There will be a crash, like computers doing two things in the same time that are not compatible. So I have to internalize the rhythm. Then I have to internalize the melody. I have to internalize the form. I have to internalize everything. The only thing that should remain is me at the piano, not even knowing what I'm doing and enjoying it tremendously.
Hmm.
So at the end of the day, in the ideal situation, it's not always the case. It depends, on the piano, the acoustic, the degree of inspiration that day, the other musician. But when you are in a state of complete internalization, I feel like I could stand up, go to the bar, have a drink, and listen to the music. So that's the goal. So that's why there are those techniques that you've seen of the one-man band. Is I need to be able to multitask. I need to be able to do all those things in the same time. So up to the point that I'm not even noticing that I'm doing several things at the same time anymore. And that's when you get to the right state.
So I think, Jean-Michel, you've been doing this for a minute and you were able to eventually find your own voice, your own style. If there are musicians who are struggling to find their own voice or own style because they're influenced by expectations or teachers or pop culture. What would you say to them so that way they can really find their authentic self as they're playing?
Well, I'm going to say something that might be a bit of a retort to what you just said, but if you want to find your voice, you'll never find it. Your voice has to come to you. I
Okay.
mean, I see so many people who say, "Yeah, but what? Who am I? I tell them, music is going to tell you in due time. Just play, just practice your instrument, just listen to great music. I think the most important thing for a musician to do is to listen to great music. That's number one. It's not practicing. Practicing comes maybe third. I mean, I have to think about it, so I don't want to waste your time. But
The order.
But I would say listening to great music, like what I did as a kid. So I would say number two is imitate it. Yeah, I heard Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Ba, 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 ba. I remember when I was a kid, I was shocked by that thing. I was like, I put the Karajan album that my uncle brought me. I put the thing and I heard da 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 da, and I was terrified. I was like, "This, who wrote this? It's insane." And then the motif kept repeating itself forever, and I was like, "Who's this man?" So I fell in love with Beethoven right there. Needless to say, I thought he was the greatest genius in the history of music, and I still kind of agree with me on that. And then I went to the piano. Da, 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 da. Oh my God! And I played that maybe, I don't know, man, 200 times. I wouldn't, and then I modulated it and changed it, and it was probably very bad at the time. I mean, you didn't want to be there when I was experimenting with that. But I discovered a word. I discovered somebody was talking to me from the distant past, and it talked to me so clearly. So listening to music. So you do that, and you go and you imitate. But if you already like, what's my voice? You're like, oh my God, this is so not, you're so not ready to think like that. And the other thing is that it's a goal. If you say, I want to sound like myself, you have a goal already. And I don't believe in goal in music. I mean, there are short-term goals. I want to play that Chopin etude correctly. That's a very tough goal, by the way, regardless of the etude. And that's a goal, of course. You're like, okay, I'm going to apply to it. And then, okay, that's a goal that you use goals. But music is always going to surprise you. It's like I have another thing that I say in my book, and you've seen it. It's like telling a tree how to grow. Oh, I'm gonna plant a tree in my garden, and I'm going to tell that tree how to grow. Will you do that to yourself? I mean, you're not a bonsai, you're a tree. So let it grow. There are things that I play now that I had no idea I would play. I'm, I'm always, I listened to a recording of myself recently because I listened to a lot to myself on recording. That to me is a great tool in improvement because, you listen and you hear what you like and you hear what you don't like. And sometimes, you're surprised in good ways or bad ways. And there is a natural selection going on. So I listen and I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Why didn't you do that before? Man, you're 65 years old, you're doing that for the first time. What were you thinking? And then a few maybe minutes later, you hear something and you say, oh no, that again. What were you thinking, man? Get rid of that. Okay, etc. So you I would say you correct yourself. That's not the way to, but you learn how to get inspiration from yourself, but also how to edit yourself, remove what you don't like as a listener. And so I heard something that I did, and I'm telling you, I have no idea where it's coming from. And that's something that I really never played before, some harmonic succession of some kind. And I was like, man, it's not me. Somebody took over, something took over, somebody took over, or whatever. And I could anticipate that, and I could certainly not make myself do it. It has to come out. It came out. A lot of things come out, and you just take them, And to me, that should be the attitude when you're an artist. You practice, you work hard, but you have to let the art come to you. If you already want to tell the art what to do, you're doing everything upside down. I think that's my personal opinion. Maybe
Jason, I think a lot of what Jean-Michel is saying would resonate with you, right? And Beit Abulafia's teachings and these permutations and finding the voice that way. And also, you teach students music too, right? About how their own style and where they're going to go on their musical journeys. And then when you're doing your universal language classes, the same thing, right? So how do you
Mhm.
think Beit Abulafia ties into what Jean-Michel is sharing with us?
Yeah, I love that, Shoshana, for the fact that Jean-Michel is saying something that I've always heard from Maimonides and from Abulafia, which is when you go through these permutations, certain things will stick out to you. So there is a thing out there about find your voice or what is your authentic self. But again, that's going to be like thinking about scales and consciously trying to get into your subconscious. And that's just basically impossible. So there's got to be a way to go into the subconscious. And for me, I grew up and I learned about a lot of Eastern systems like Buddhism about releasing the thought or observing thought, but that didn't connect for me. I liked going deeper and deeper into thought, but looking at the different aspects of thought. So in Abulafia, he would take the word like shalom for peace. It would be a shin lamed vav mem, and he would see all the different words inside of it. And whatever clicked to him, and wherever his spirit or soul went to, he would develop that idea from that word. Maybe shalem means completeness, or l'shem means for the sake of the name of God. So I think it's the same way, and I think that's why I really love having Jean-Michel on the call today because I think a lot of people I'm not saying right or wrong, but I think a lot of people go into art saying, I'm going to get something from this. I'm going to acquire my voice. I'm going to acquire audience respect. And it doesn't happen if you want it consciously. But if you do it unconsciously and you just do it, I think about, I'll complete with this. I think about if someone asked me for coffee and would meet me somewhere, and I'd say, okay, great. And I got my grammar book out and I studied for 3 hours and I was all nervous to go meet them for coffee. They would be totally terrified of me if I came and be like, I have a great time with you. And let me check my book. They would just be nervous and anxious to have coffee with me. And I think a lot of music comes off that way to me because you're in front of an audience and you're expecting to prove that you're a jazz artist. I'm saying for myself, I've had those feelings. So I love
No, of course.
Jean-Michel's ideas of, have the drum going while you can still talk to somebody. And can you have coffee through music? Can it be that, quote
Mhm.
unquote important to you? And I think the subconscious comes out. So that's why I love this connection of Abulafia and Jean-Michel because is there a secular approach, a religious approach, spiritual, universal approach, but we're all trying to get to the subconscious and just enjoy being alive and creating.
Yeah, I think if you are trying to get consciously into your subconscious, you're obviously into an oxymoron right there, I mean, by definition, So you shouldn't do that because that's going to drive you crazy. Eventually, I don't think it's just going to work. But I feel like you have to accept that you don't know everything, that you don't control everything. All that I'm saying, the way that I'm talking, sometimes people can think, oh, he's arrogant, he knows, which it's just very personal. It's just me. It might not work for somebody else. And what you said, by the way, about when people consciously try to seduce audiences, it doesn't work. Well, we have lots of counterexamples of that.
Mm.
When you do art, that's another thing. You don't do art for an audience. Bach, when he wrote Art of the Fugue, and he was dying at the time, he was not even known. His sons were more known than he was. And he just wrote that unbelievable piece of music that to me is one of the absolute apex of music, not even thinking that anybody would even hear it ever.
Wow.
You know, he didn't have an audience. Nobody cared about the contrapuntus. It was too complicated for the time. You know, and people were listening to Handel, who was a great composer too, by the way, but not Bach. And the audience. When I started playing music, I didn't have an audience. I mean, I just had to do it. I mean, the reason why you play music is usually, I mean, yeah, it has changed, but for me at least, and again, it's very personal, it's because I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. It was just, it's like, can you live without breathing? No, I'm going to die. Well, can you live without music? No, I'm going to die. So that's it. It's a no choice situation. So once you have that, you have to accept that you're not going to control. There are things that are completely outside of your control. And the beauty of art is that pretty much everything is out of your control. That the beauty is that it's the unknown. It's like, to me, that's the difference between an art and a discipline, even though there are some beautiful disciplines, of course. But You don't know. Do you think Van Gogh knew how he was going to paint it toward the end of his life? That was like came to him like an explosion. Stravinsky said the same thing about Rite of Spring. People ask him, "How do you write it?" He said, "I don't know. It came to me. It just got got over me and through me, and there it was." But you have to accept that you're not in control. Something in you is in control, but it's not you, the conscious you, and you have to accept that. You have to accept that you don't know how you're going to play tomorrow or what. And it's difficult. And I think that's why people in classical music, they're very scared of improvisation. And you sit in front of a Chopin valse and you play it and you know what's going to come out, and it's beautiful. And I love classical music, and I love to play classical music. Actually, that's my number one passion, maybe. But I'm a bad reader and I don't have much of a memory, so those are two little problems. But you still know you kind of know what's going to come out. You improvise, you have to accept that unknown component.
Right. I want to pick up on what you just said about not having all the control, right? If we want to improvise, I think that can be scary for some people, right? Is to give up that control, to not know what's going to happen next and just let things happen. So, what would you advise people on? Okay, let me just trust this. How do they get to the place where they are comfortable to just play the songs, play whatever is coming out of them, go ahead and improvise without abandon? How do they do that? How do they get there?
A couple of glasses of wine can help sometimes,
Indeed.
stuff like that.
Wine helps
But
everything.
wine helps. But I don't have an answer to that because I don't know. It depends on the person. What I do as a teacher, I mean, I don't even like that word. I would say a coach or shrink or enabler, empowerer. I don't know which word I could use, but I make students play, and sometimes they are in that state where they are making music, and I tell them, I said, "Did you hear what you did?" "Oh, I didn't know what I was doing." I said, "That's it exactly. That's why it was so
There it
great."
is. Yeah.
And so you push the button, and they're like, "Oh, okay," and it make them think, and they do realize that, and you make them record themselves. I always ask my student to record every lesson, and I said, "Listen to it when you get home," and then they come back the week after. "Man, it sounded great, but I have no idea what I was doing." I said, "Well, welcome to improvisation. Now you know what it is. You don't need me. Go home and play." That's it. Pushing the button. You can do it. It's not like trust yourself. That's not exactly that. It's just you don't have a choice. Let it come out, because if you try to control it, it's not going to happen. So you don't have a choice. Just let it go through you. You know.
Jason,
Well,
yeah.
and you have to
Oh, I'm
accept the
sorry.
fact that some days it's gonna suck. I'm sorry to use that word. Excuse my friend. But
We're
some
humans. Yeah.
some days it's gonna be, oh man, I'm the best pianist ever, and 3 days later it's all gone. And where is it? And you have to accept that. It's. I've seen the greatest musician go through quasi-suicidal states after a bad concert. Including myself. You have to hate yourself for a few days, then you recover, and then you do it again. But you have to accept those cycles, those curves. You have to accept that it's part of it comes with the territory.
Yeah. I've had the pleasure of watching Jason play a lot. And so this makes me think of you and what Jean-Michel is saying, Jason, because when you get up there and you just jam on your guitar, I can see it's just coming out. You're not thinking, it's just the notes are flowing out. So what is that feeling like for you? Are you trusting yourself? Are you just feeling the music, the band? What is that emotion when you're playing with abandon?
Well, I would say for myself, and again, I think I attribute a lot to Abulafia because I think when I previously played, I tried to think of a scale and what would sound really good at that moment, and I could feel the block. I think that's why I looked for Abulafia. So later, as I've played past 2018, I just make sure that the people I play with, I would spend time with. So that's Eric or Steve Wachtel or Dalian or Terry or Sheen. Those guys, I do just spend time with them at the studio just talking. So when I'm out there playing, it's basically the same thing. I'm just spending time talking with them. I will visualize certain Hebrew letters or a landscape, or I'll do something maybe to tell over a story or something that's going on with me. But I think it is. There's a joyous feeling of spending time with people and exchanging ideas. And I hear certain ideas from the drummer or the saxophonist will give an idea, then I'll repeat it. So it's all about the joy of dialogue for me, and that's what Universal Language Room taught me is I was always a music performer until I really did Universal Language Room where there was no audience. But even when there is an audience now, I still don't think about them as an audience. They're still interacting with me. So I will say that to the point of Jean-Michel, this is what I think happens in religion is that in religion, I think people are always on. It's always like everything's good, I'm with God, everything's good. But I sense with other people and myself, we're going through all kinds of cycles. But it's very hard for people in a religious setting to admit it. It's like we're gonna be joyful, joyful, positive, positive, joyful, joyful. I'm like, man, that's too much. I can't be the sun all the time. I've got to feel like the moon. I've got to wax and wane. And so that's what I'm hoping comes into our I'm just speaking for our Jewish religious life, is that people would come and say, like, I'm just having a terrible day, but maybe they can say it through music and they can express their cycles rather than try and keep pushing that, like, we're great, everything's great. And I think all through modern life, it's like we grew up with all the commercials. If you use this toothpaste, you're great. If you drink this Coca-Cola, you're great. Everything's great. Happy, happy, positive, positive. And that's just exhausting. So I like that idea of how to integrate that maybe as artists, but even just in our own mundane lives.
Well, there is this comedian that I like very much, who's been canceled a few years ago because he did something that were not like very, very nice, but I still think he's very good. And he says, ev everything's amazing and everyone's miserable. I think social media has pushed that to the point of madness. I actually even like talked about it fairly recently. I said positive thinking is an incredible pressure. It's like you are actually almost threatened of something if you're not thinking positive. I mean, it's and I say, music is made of all kind of emotions: positive, negative, anger, sadness, disappointment, despair. I mean, if you look at the greatest artists in the history of art, 90% were very, very unhappy people. I mean, apart from a few, but if you look at Beethoven, Schubert, Mozart, Bach was okay comparatively to others, even though we don't know him that well. But, Van Gogh, it's a horror show, and I can keep going like that. So you'd say, you have to think positive. I'm like, no, I hope Beethoven, because there would be no Beethoven, there would be no. Life is full of emotions of a very wide range, and it's beautiful to be able to express those in music, even though sometimes it's very painful. And I think social media, I mean, TV at some point, and now social media are basically like driving people insane. Everybody has to show their teeth all the time. Like, oh, I'm so happy. I mean, it's almost like a joke, you could imagine an alien arriving on Earth and looking at those screens with everybody doing this. And the alien would be, what's wrong with those people? It's very weird. It's not natural. And that, to me, is a word that I use a lot, is the word natural. I think that, you know, things have become more, of course, there's, technology, the internet, etc. But things have become less and less natural. People are really fighting against nature all the time, you know? Yeah, it's very normal to be miserable when you're a human, it's but how can I say it? It's um, it's very normal to go through all kind of moments, different moments, like music, and those things are not. They're neither good nor bad. It's the human nature. It's the human experience, you know. And I think many humans, me included, by the way, I plead guilty. We sometimes don't accept our condition, you know. because it's a weird condition, you know. We come, we live, we disappear. It's a weird thing when you think about it. There's lots of absurdity in it, you know. And I feel like at my age now, I have accepted the fact that it is what it is, like music, you know. And I am very, yeah, you could call me maybe a stoicien. We would say in French, stoicien. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how to. I you know, I do a lot of things in my life to make things happen. You know, of course, I look for concerts, I teach. I'm not sitting and waiting for the end. You know, of course not. I'm not like that. But I I have come to accept the fact that the human condition comes with all kind of good and bad things, and that you have to go through that, you know. And for me, it might be easier than for some others because, of course, if I suffered from depression, for example, or if I had, you know, if I had some kind of an illness, which I'm a very lucky person at the age of 65. I've never went through any of that. So I consider myself very lucky. I have no merit. It's just luck, you know. But now, if I imagine myself in the shoes of somebody who's maybe not mentally adjusted, or whose health is in jeopardy and stuff like that, it's very, very, very difficult. And asking those people to be happy is almost like disrespecting them. You know, they have good reasons not to be. Think of people in Africa, or I don't know, people who don't have enough to eat, poor people, you know, homeless people, etc. So I think there is a bit of arrogance in that positive thinking thing. You know, it's very easy for people who have no problem to think positively. You know,
Yeah.
positive thinking works better when everything goes well. And so sometimes the people who, like Bill Gates telling you that you have to think positive is like a gigantic joke, you know. Come on, man. What? Look at you. Come on. Who are you?
Right.
Even I feel like if I tell a student you have to feel good, I never do that because I'm like, hey, man, come on. You don't know that. You don't know what that person goes through. So I think you have to be to show compassion, but you shouldn't apply that pressure of fake happiness. You know, I think it's a very bad thing to do.
Right. So if we're talking a lot about juxtapositions, right? We've got sun and moon, happiness, sadness, all these different things that are, polarizing to each other. We could talk about harmonies and melodies and beautiful music all day long, but I want us to talk about the opposite of that and the silence that does exist in music and in improvisation. I know that that's part of your teachings. So what does silence when a musician is playing reveal about that musician, and how would they learn to incorporate that into their music?
Yeah, that's a deep question. I might do another parallel with real life. You know, you are with someone at the dinner table, let's say, and you're not talking. So, you know, you've been married a long time, which is my case. You know, you're at the dinner table and just not talking because perhaps you have nothing to say, or perhaps because there's no interesting subject that comes on the table. But you still see the person. The person is in front of you. You see, it's still there. He or she is still there, and I feel like you still get that person. Sometimes more than when he or she's talking, because sometimes language can be a little. You hide behind, you know, language and
Right.
behind. So, how was your day? We go back to positive thinking. Oh,
Right.
wonderful. How about you? Amazing. You know, that's
Rainbows and butterflies. Yeah.
curtain, that's smoke, you know. But then when you don't say anything and you catch eye contact, you look at the person looks at you. I think sometimes you see way more like that in that moment than you see during a long and sometimes empty conversation. So it's to me, music is the same. Sometimes you play, sometimes it's. I don't think silence has to do with the fact that you play or you don't play. I
Okay.
think there is silence between the notes also. Sometimes you
Right.
play and there is
Yeah.
silence even though you play, you know. You play two short notes, there is silence in between, you know. And I think those moments again, I'm going to look back to the same thing, are part of the human condition. Sometimes nothing happens. Sometimes you're even bored. You know, I don't know who said that. It might have been Keith Jarrett who says, sometimes you do a concert and nothing happens for like 30 minutes, but then all that didn't happen leads to something, and the end of the concert is great. So you needed those 30 minutes of nothing happening so that you could go there to that magic moment towards the end, or in the middle or whatever. So you need those moments of, let's say, suspension. You need boredom in life, actually. You know,
Yeah.
you need to be bored sometimes. Always active and interested. And it's impossible. First we need to sleep, so that's the first thing. And that's another thing. Sometimes you play music, you're in a sleep-like state. You're like almost like disconnected. That's a great state, by the way. It's a beautiful state to be. So you see, boredom, sleep. They have their equivalents in music and in real life, and you need those moments.
Right. Jason, this makes me think, I'm going to read your mind a little bit. Talk to us about melodic Hesperides, what Jean-Michel was just sharing, right? You can relate to this, but in a different way.
Yeah, I think that this is the thing that I felt like I might have invented, where I studied Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and he was one of the Hasidic rabbis who wanted people to be joyful and happy during the day, which is the common theme, but he gave his students the 1 hour just to talk to God in your own voice or just sit with God. And similar, that you would just have this relationship with God that wasn't always on and happy and just always on. You would just struggle and talk to God about what you're worried about, and keep the silence and just sit with God or just walk with God. So, and that's supposed to be done in private. So I've done it for many years in private, but I wanted the public version of it. So with Abulafia and learning the permutations, I discovered ways to talk about my feelings about God or reality to other people through the melody in in public. And there are those moments where there's 10 of us sitting around and someone will talk about their life and they'll just sit there and then think about the next note. And so a lot of this goes back way, way back to Maimonides, 800 years ago, who talked about that God had this active intellect and that information is always being sent to us. So I think that's the idea of not really finding your voice, not trying to be the most expert artist, but I mean, even basketball players talk about making three-pointers in their sleep. They use that language about it was just coming to them. They just felt the ball was going slow through the air. And sometimes when you're involved with music, I guess what I'm just trying to say is that there's such a deeper level to music, and we miss it when we're performers, and we miss it when we're trying to be number one in our field. And you should try to be number one in your field, but particularly with art, I think you miss the whole boat doing it. And the more
No,
then
but
you're
there's
dealing
no
with, yeah,
there's no number one in art. It's not
right,
a sport.
exactly.
It's not a sport.
Right.
Nobody
Subjective.
wins. It's
Nobody
not like
wins.
it's not
But
like
I
the
guess I'm saying
Olympic
more
Games.
like you're looking for your own excellence. But even that, to your point, Jean-Michel, I think it just blocks the whole artistic experience. And so,
No, no, you try to get better. You practice.
yeah,
I practice my scales, my arpeggios, my technique. No, you want to get better, of course. Well, I told you when we had the preparatory phone call a few days ago.
yeah.
Our backgrounds are very different. I come from a very secular Jewish family, and to me, I as a non-religious person, which is what I am, I uh, I have found all the I would say I found all the transcendence I need in music. I would put it that way, which means that and in science, and strangely enough, I did lots of scientific studies. Actually, I was supposed to become an engineer. I did
Hmm.
like I was in the science. That's what I studied. I didn't study music. I studied science, and I felt like the universe was absolutely fascinating thing. And in my case, of course, it was, I think, a much more. I think it was really essentially scientific, science oriented. And I am still in absolute awe of people like Albert Einstein or Niels Bohr or Heisenberg and etc. Who did find stuff in nature that was inimaginable to the human intuition and to the human mind. Theory of relativity, quantum mechanics are absolutely contrary to human intuition. They are absolutely counterintuitive. So much so that even the scientists themselves are not sure they understand it, you know. And so to me, that is my vision of transcendence, really, that. And music brings me that. I go back to like a Beethoven symphony, for example, any of them, by the way. And I'm like, the simple fact that this can exist to me, my life is full. I mean, maybe I need less than you, or I need something different. I don't know. I don't want to say that, but I would say my need for transcendence is yeah, mathematics. I was very good at math. Now I'm not as good. My son is good now, but I lost a few neurons in the aging process, and I'm not as good as I used to be. But I love math. I was very, very good at it, really. I, I thought I was very good at it until I met some people who were really geniuses, and I was like, okay, man, forget it, play piano. But math to me is absolutely transcendent. And when you think about it, if you go a few million light years from the Earth in some other galaxy, because not only we humans are like, we are on a small planet near a small star at the edge of a small galaxy. I mean, even that is, we cannot really wrap our minds around that, and not to talk about other galaxies and the universe in expansion. But you see, for example, people a million light years from now in terms of distance and from here. They might have a mathematical theory, a theory of mathematics that has absolutely nothing to do with ours, because the symbols are completely different. Because we take everything for granted. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But maybe there are completely different ways of appreciating quantity or mass or gravity. All the things that we all have in common. If you go a million light years from here, you still have light, gravity, electromagnetism. It's the same thing. But seen by a civilization that absolutely has no symbol in common with ours, we might not even understand it at all. And so to me, that is a transcendental thought, because it shows how incredibly vast, the world is. Like, when I say the world, it could be the universe, the cosmos, the reality out there. I'm still not convinced that space-time really exists. We might all be in a giant DVD, that's actually a scientific theory that is actually worked on these days by great scientists, like going away from space-time and to pure information. And it's actually perhaps one of the way that theories could be improved. But to me, and it requires so much imagination, to think about the thing. So that's my transcendence. I wanted to share it with you guys. It's a different one, but I
No,
think
I think that's wonderful. So from engineer, right, to musician, professor. So Jason, from financial planner by day, right? You're in the numbers and
yeah.
finances, and then you're this blues
Oh,
musician.
I might need you. I might need you. You're a financial planner. I might need you.
Right?
I'm available.
So like
I'll call you
same thing,
tomorrow.
right? This oh, afterwards, yes, he'll hook you up. So
Okay.
sort of a similar path, right? For your path to self-discovery through music, right?
Well, I think that's very a cute observation because when Jean-Michel is talking, I think of Abulafia as the bridge between secular and religious because Abulafia followed Maimonides, and Maimonides, controversially enough, said that Jewish mysticism is math and physics. He said that that
Mm,
is the source of transcendence. So it
oh,
is what
that's beautiful.
Jean-Michel said, yeah. And Maimonides very controversial because many rabbis said, "What are you talking about? How could you say it's physics and math? That's open to everybody. It's our secret tradition that."
No, it's not. It's not. It's
And
not.
so
No, it's not.
Maimonides and Abulafiam afterwards said that no, it is the universal math and physics and study of the structure
Mm,
of the universe leads to the ultimate transcendence experience to
right.
God. So
Mm,
I see Abulafia as that bridge, as someone who can, when I listen to Jean-Michel talk, I say, yeah, that's how I think, and I
mm.
certainly I take on the mitzvot and I do the Shabbat, and that's a whole different world, and on that we diverge. But in
Mm.
terms of transcendence, I would say I'm pretty much fully aligned, and that's what I love about this
You,
oblong and permutations.
it's interesting because I said a million light years from here, people might have a complete different set of symbols. But at the end, they just say the same thing as we do,
Yeah, I think so.
using different symbols. So, it's a bit like what you just said. And I think it's not a coincidence. It's not, I would say, just chance that there are so many high level scientists in the Jewish community. I mean, I think it's a culture that's always been extraordinary keen on that, on science, and I mean, it's unbelievable when you look at. So my uncles were very. There are two things they loved. We were all like secular, but there are two things they loved was science and music. It was all science, music. Well, we loved other things: literature, good food, good wine,
Mhm.
steak. One of my uncle likes steak a little bit too much, and he's not among us anymore because of that. But you know, sometimes bad diets were part of the menu. But we really like the discussions were so rich. It was incredible, and transcendent really. Like I was after a discussion with them, I was in another world. I think every person and probably every civilization out there that we don't know, they find their they find their way to experience that. Charles Darwin, the very famous Charles Darwin, who sometimes religious people don't like too much for obvious reasons. He said every human should believe what they can. We just believe what we can grasp. And I think that's a good way to put it. And it's going to be different from one person to the other. That's very normal.
Yeah, I love this. I feel like our conversation has we've touched on so many different topics and it has just been incredible and it's such a pleasure to for you to share all of your knowledge and thoughts and musical experiences with us and we are so grateful that you have joined us, Jean-Michel. It's been an absolute pleasure.
I don't know much, but I try to, give you the illusion that I did. But
It's more
I
than an illusion. No, it's pretty remarkable. Jason, final thoughts as we wrap up?
I want to say very much huge thank you to Jean-Michel Pilc, to
oh, my
Shoshana
pleasure,
Thanker.
my pleasure,
What a
my pleasure.
wonderful discussion. Something very, very different for our audience, for me too, as
Mm,
we were coming on the show, and I'm in this new. Well, I'll just show it to the audience. This is my new Beit Abulafia study room here. It's gotten all fixed
mm,
up.
mm.
And yeah, I mean, I had 20 or 30 textbooks and theory books, and after studying Jean-Michel's DVD, and I have the book, you should be able to see it here if I get it close. It's about the music. It's on my phone, and I've got the physical
Oh yeah,
copy.
yeah, yeah.
This is a great, great book. I highly, highly recommend it to everybody. I'm halfway through, and I'm tracking to get done by the end of next week. Wonderful book. So his music is on iTunes. I've gotten the standards and I've gotten the solo piano, and I'll remember the titles. But it was with Ari Honig and wonderful albums, wonderful thinker, and I think we've just been able to share where music can cross over to religious, secular, science, subconscious. There's all kinds of ways that musicians, I think, act as the bridge to the different fields of human
Of
endeavor. And
course.
if you needed anything more today, it would be helping people make connections between their very, very driven in views. So I just
Mm.
want to say thank you to everyone for watching. I want to thank my parents, my brothers, and my wife for joining. Michal, Avram, Gabriel, Judy, and Martin. Yeah, there we go with the the
Oh
fireworks
my
are going.
God!
How'd you do that?
It's
That's
actually
fun.
the new Zoom.
The new Zoom
You
can
you
do it.
you can remove it in setting, but you do a gesture, and Zoom interprets the gesture
It's so
and
fun.
actually automatically